How many of you had a cup of coffee this morning? Okay. Now, I want you to enthusiastically stand up if you wondered whether those coffee beans were carried by a farmer on their back to the aggregator. No takers? It's interesting how, in many cases, the smallholder farmer discussion is often met with an eye roll. And as someone coming from the industry, from a commercial background, I can completely understand why that happens. But yet, so many of our global value chains are completely dependent on smallholder farmers. And we've spoiled you today with a phenomenal panel who have so many success stories that I really hope will help us to change that narrative and that idea that the word smallholder has a response. So do excuse me that I need to read their phenomenal CVs because I do want to do it complete justice. But first up on our panel, we've got Kevin Chen. Kevin Chen is the lead consultant for IFPRI. He studies how food systems can work better for the rural poor. Drawing on decades of research across East and Central Asia, his work spans agri-food change, sustainable food systems, and transformation in nutrition. He is the chair professor at Zhejiang University, and he's head of IFPRI's Eastern Asia Central Office. He is also the current editor-in-chief of the IFAMA Review. I welcome Mr. Chen. We've also got joining us today, Tony Salas. Tony Salas is an agribusiness entrepreneur, investment, academic, and advisor. I don't know when he sleeps. He's the founder and president of ACM Consulting, which is a leading agribusiness consulting firm in Peru, and he has experience in over 500 projects spanning 30 countries and 3 continents. We welcome Mr. Tony Salas. And lastly, Hilary Barry, who's the founder and CEO of Lady Agri Impact Hub in Belgium. She is a 2024 World Food Prize top agri-food pioneer. Since 1993, she has championed gender-smart investment across African, Caribbean, and Pacific regions, pairing mentoring with B2B partnerships and patient capital to equip women in agribusiness with skills, finance, and climate-smart equipment and technology. Lady Agri supports women across 27 countries and across several agri-value food chains. Welcome, Hilary. Wherever. So, Kevin, I would actually like to start today's conversation with you. Your experience in China and also from the research background, China has managed a dramatic reduction in rural poverty while still keeping smallholders engaged in the value chains and the agricultural system. What policy or conditions made that possible, and which of those are genuinely replicable in context outside of the China policy and political system?
Well, thank you, Michelle. Let me first to thank the organizer for inviting me to be in this panel, and thanks for the very big question and a very interesting question. And indeed, China has been achieved something remarkable in the past 30 or 40 years. And the one significant achievement is probably they brought the huge reduction in the number of population and the poverty. And along from 2012 to 2020, they reduced the number of the population and the poverty by 100 million, right? No one did that before. No country did that before. So this is historical. And so China must did something right. And at the same time, as Michelle mentioned, China certainly still have large number of smallholder farmers. It is not by the choice of government. It's the reality, really, right? And as of today, China still have about 200 million smallholders. In the beginning of the reform of China, it's probably during early 1980, and China has about 250 million smallholders. Well, as you can see, the number reduced, but not that significantly. So that means the smallholder are there to stay. It is very important, right? So what kind of policy, what kind of institution made that happen in China? The very first institutional thing, actually Professor Wen Gefu mentioned that in the morning, it's really related to the reform which happened in China about 40 plus years ago. It's the adoption of what we call the agricultural responsibility system. In the Western world, we're very much used to, well, the land belongs to the farmers, not in China, right? Land belongs to the states. Land belongs to the collectives. But a change happened. In 1985, they adopted the nationwide policy. All the land which owned by commune that time was reallocated to the individual farmers. It's not in terms of ownership. States, collectives still own the land. But however, the use rights has been given to the individual farmers or farm households. This is a huge, significant change, right? What's that mean? That means each small farmers has the land to use, to produce the foods, to earn the income. What that happen? Well, they produce enough food for the people, for the family to eat. Professor Wen Gefu mentioned he was hungry that time, right? We have a coupon for the grain to feed ourselves because we don't have enough grain that time, right? With this kind of system, we produce enough grain to feed the peoples and allow them to earn some income. So that means each single farmer has a small parcel of land. Typically, they have 7 or 8 small pieces of land. How big size of a typical smallholder farmer in China? Anyone want to guess?
3 hectares.
Well, about half hectares, right? 7 mu in Chinese unit, so half hectares. Very small, right? Hardly to make that as a farmer in the Western, more developed countries. Or, you know. So, but with this kind of policy, one thing for sure, it's bound to have a huge number of smallholder farmers because of this kind of institutional setting. So as you can see, with this kind of institutional setting, and you will have the large number of smallholders. And you're going to sacrifice some efficiencies. You're going to have a challenge ahead of time when you modernize your agricultural sectors. So that's one institution which are very, very important. Second very important policy is really the strong public support or expanding on the rural infrastructure. There's old saying in China always, if you want to get people rich in China, you have to give more income to the smallholder farmers. And the way you do it is to build roads for them. So you build the roads to get richer. And you can employ more. you need to build the irrigation. You need to build IT. If AI, you want to make AI work for them, you need that. So all those infrastructure has been happening in China, and which becomes so important to support the income, the industry which involve the smallholder farmers. So that's the second institute policy side which make that happen, reducing poverty and also help the smallholder to gain more income in the process. And the third thing, if I do want to mention, is really related to this panel's title, right? It's what I would term that as the inclusive food value chain development, which is critical. That means how you develop the agricultural and food value chain which actively engage the smallholder. This is very difficult. Globally, we don't have much success, really, right? We still struggle with that. That's why we emphasize that so much. How can we engage smallholders? This is a tough challenge. China did that, I would say, reasonably well. So how they does that? Because with the reality, with the huge number of smallholders, particularly in the crop sector, right? Livestock is a different story. But for crop sector, it depends on the land, how much land holding you have. It's bound to be small. Whether such small, if any agricultural business want to develop, they have to work with the smallholders, right? So agribusiness has to find a way to work with the smallholders. So to address the poverty issue, smallholder inclusive food value chain development becomes the key. So two things has to happen. One, you have to treat that as a top priority for government. That's what China did. So the state leader put the priority on the importance of engage smallholder in the value chain, to engage them, to give them income, to address the income issue. And the way to do it, the agribusiness has to be convinced to come up with the allocation of the benefit across the value chain. And the fair share has to be given to the smallholder farming sectors. So to do that, you need a lot of innovation. This is the part China doing quite well. And I think it's going continually to be a very important for the future of China. So there could be many other policies and make that happen, but I'd like to highlight those three. Michelle, I hope I answered your question. Now, I know you also have a question, which are, I can extend the model to other developing countries. For the household responsibility system, very difficult. I was in Brazil, right? The land tenure is a huge issue. If to solve it, I said, oh, well, we can reallocate the land. Is that possible? It's going to cause a revolution in Brazil. Nobody wants that, right? You can do that in China. You cannot do that in Brazil. So that one is not replicable. Very difficult. And infrastructure, public expenditure on that. That's highly replicable, right? And how can we help a smallholder farmer in Brazil? I look at Brazil, a lot of smallholders in the beef sector, right? And a bit also in soybean. But of course, Brazilians' definition of a smallholder and the Chinese' definition of smallholder are totally different, right? But one thing I do feel is the same. We need better roads in Brazil, right? They hardly can move the soybean with the inland transportation system. So they need more roads if they want to help with smallholders and so on. So that's definitely replicable. For building the inclusive smallholders value chain, that's really we have to look at that as a public policy domain. And the government has to be engaged and make sure agribusiness are disciplined enough to allocate a fair share of the income to the smallholder sector. So this, I think, is also less than partially replicable.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Tony, I want to come over to you. Kevin just touched for us on the importance of understanding that sometimes these things take longer. And you always talk to us about the resilience that already exists in multi-generational smallholder farming systems. And I would like to pick your brain about how do we as agribusiness go about managing realistic expectations on change that we can actually see happening at smallholder farming level.
Yeah, that's interesting, because you want to have changes, you want to have them, right now you want to see, this smallholder farmer community flourishing from one day to the other one, maybe one generation to the other one. It takes a long time, as Kevin was explaining. And I think, first of all, understanding the poverty issue of the smallholder farming is important. So I think understanding that, the poverty is a consequence of not having the access to technology, to roads, to the markets, to the financial sector, and so on. So at the end, addressing the problem is important because defining the problem is important. And if you think that the problem is the poverty, you're wrong. Poverty is a consequence. So I think what China has done good is, providing all that additional ancillary infrastructure for those guys to be successful. Yeah. That's important because with half an hectare, Kevin's not going to tell me stories here about, this guy being really successful with half an hectare. That doesn't exist. Yeah. If he produces, 8 tons or 4 tons of potatoes or 4 tons of maize, that's still poverty, Yeah. So that's a fact. But definitely, if the government is there to support beyond that, that's interesting. In our countries, like Brazil, like Peru, or other ones, we don't have that government support to that extent. We need to look at how the value chain itself figures that out, and how we do that equity sharing in a way that it works. So procurement is important. So here the responsibility goes, unfortunately, to the OLAMs, to the ECOMs, to the Cargills, to the whatever, to the PepsiCos, to the Nestles. Those are the guys that will have the responsibility, I think, to look for a fair share in the whole value chain. And if they don't do that, they are going against their own values, Because, at the end of the day, we as consumers, at the end of the line, we're just taking whatever is in the shelf. Yeah. And we make our judgment with whatever information we get. The certifications we see, the things that we trust or mistrust or whatever, and then that's it. So at the end, the guy that's actually facing the farmer is the procurement, is the ones that are sourcing it from the smallholder farmers, the one that is sourcing the coffee from the train mules or for whatever you get the coffee on. And I think that's important because, they have perverse incentives for own bonuses, They make money or whatever, and the EBITDA margins are larger or smaller depending how much pressure they put to the smallholder farmer and co-ops at the end. So it's a broken system, and it's difficult to address it. With open eyes and without greenwashers, and saying it openly. This is something that is not working, and it's very, very difficult to fix. And the only thing that is to do, I think, is awareness. Second thing is understanding. I think we still don't understand the smallholder farmer community as a whole. Mm-hmm. Because, they have lots of things that are missing. Technology is one, but the other priorities are also there, and those are the consequences of poverty. And at the end, when you actually face technology things coming from university and high-tech, ag-tech, or whatever, students that are now into technology, we address the smallholder farmer like, we know what you need to do. You need to apply this, you need to do this, you need to prune this way, because, I came from the university and you didn't. So that's it, And then the farmer has just to take it in. Yeah. And sometimes we don't have what Raj was saying the other day. We don't have that local knowledge, awareness of how to engage with the smallholder farmer in order for him to make the changes. Because as you were saying, I mean, for generations, he has been there, and what you're seeing is a farmer that is there today because the grandparents and the great-grandparents did something resilient or whatever, risk-averse, so that this guy can be still here today talking to you. So why should he believe in what you are proposing, that he should change the way he is managing his crop from this day on until tomorrow, if this is not a system that has been proven to make him successful? So I think the empathy of extension is talking to him, the storytelling behind it, so he understands that this can be step by step, and it will take 10 years or 15 years or 20 years to change. That will not happen overnight. I think that's still complicated, but we need to be aware of that, and I don't, unfortunately, have an answer for that. Please.
I want to go across to Hilary, who was nodding very much at a lot of the things that you raised there, Tony. I think, Hilary, a question to you. We've touched now on the importance of multi-stakeholder responsibility towards the smallholder. Are there any blind spots that, on behalf of us smallholder advocates, that you think we need to bring into the light more?
Mm-hmm. So that's an easy answer for Lady Agri. It says Belgium actually behind my name, but if you hear the accent, I'm born and bred from Cork. I am a result of UCC, and many of the answers I will give you today I learned here. Some of my professors are in the lecture hall with us, so I better be correct in what I answer. And that partnership is carrying forward between UCC and Lady Agri now, taking some of the master students. The blind spot for me is that, Tony, and with all the respect I owe to you, we talk about the smallholder often as he, and we don't talk about smallholders as she. So happy International Year of the Woman Farmer. We heard Phil Hogan speak.
This is the year of the woman farmer.
So the massive blind spot is women, and this is why we actually set up Lady Agri. When we talk about commodity supply chains like the cocoa and coffees, often we say, oh, women aren't involved in that. But if you look at cocoa, and this is, again, I'm bringing back my link. I don't know, did anyone get the UCC chocolate today? Which was being, it's done from O'Connell Chocolatiers, and there's a partnership in place with the food training lab here. So as you said earlier, we drank our coffee, but we're also eating our chocolate, and we were smallholders behind that. Many of the smallholders are documented as being male behind the cocoa value chains. However, there are 17 steps by the time you get cocoa to market in chocolate form, and 14 of those are handled by women. So again, going unnoticed, we don't have disaggregated statistics, we don't have data on that, and normally what is marked down in the FAO statistics is that we have 42% of women are small producers, farmers. However, we normally take those statistics at the transaction stage when the money is being handed over. So of course she's invisible there because she's actually not touching the finance. Going into in terms of a solution around that, around these blind spots. So our intention, setting up Lady Agri, is to focus on women from farm to fork. First of all, getting them out of invisibility and making them visible, and the first step to that is getting them organised in cooperatives. So a small farm, a small producer, most of the CEOs, as you said, ran out of the room perhaps before we came up on stage. When we get farmers organised, we get resilience, which is the theme of, I think, the whole conference. So rooted in resilience means investing there at the roots and getting them structured and organised in cooperatives. If cooperatives are formalised, we now have paperwork, and now we're visible to buyers, and we're visible to banks, and we're visible to fertilizer suppliers, input suppliers, extensionists. So that visibility is a massive issue. And I think that is something that we have seen with the Chinese strategy and policy, is really focusing in small producers and not an afterthought. They're a focus. None of the multinationals or agri-businesses that we heard speaking yesterday would have a business without small farmers, without producers. So it is clear that the whole sustainable business model is based on the resilience of these producers.
Yeah.
So it's not an opt-out or an add-on, it is a fundamental. What perhaps I would think scares the private sector is that patience which is needed, because it's not a switch, it's not a quick AI model, what we were talking about in the previous panel. Farming is a long-term game. And I think those countries who will succeed in having food security, in developing sustainable food systems, are going to be playing that long game. And in China, what I have greatly appreciated is that their food security policy is a 100-year policy. Those who are working today are thinking about what will our great-grandchildren be eating.
Yeah.
What frightened me yesterday was that when we talked about the risks to our supply chains, what came up in the conversations was GLP-1. I even actually went to my AI and I was like, why are we mentioning GLP-1 in this equation? Especially when we're talking about a global conference. So it seemed to me that what we were discussing yesterday, we were thinking of the Northern European who has the access to finance to pay for this. We are talking about the North American who have the money and finances to pay for this. And we're not talking about each strata of the society either. We're talking about a very specific economic stratas. The other thing that I found was missing yesterday, which I think is definitely part of the solution, and both you and I, Michelle, say that. I can see with your African badge. I've been wearing this since I was 18 in Ghana, is that no one talked about the market, the next door market, which is Africa, which is 1.58 billion people. No one mentioned that yesterday as an opportunity. I will be going to Abidjan Côte d'Ivoire next Tuesday. I was in Guinea 2 weeks ago. 4 weeks ago, I was in Cameroon. The worries we had yesterday about a population who is growing older and a population which is deflating in terms of numbers along the Western Europe belt and the American belt is actually being responded to if we look at Africa. The average age is 19 years of age. We have a fast growing middle class. We have a middle class that want to go to supermarkets and have quality, traceable food. They have the income to spend. And yet no one's looking at that market. Yeah. No one is looking at, other than outside Kenya, we have quite an underdeveloped dairy market. And yet what I was listening to yesterday was all of the Irish and international dairy industry saying, how are we going to manage GLP-1? Yeah. I'm being provocative because of my great gurus, Mary Shellman, is in the room today, who has been a huge motivator for me and for Lady Agri. But I think it's important that we talk here about the real conversations, and we have a broader view. Yes, we're in perhaps crisis from a Western point of view, but if you flip it, there's massive opportunity, there's human resources, and this is why China is so present in Africa at the moment. Any of the secondary towns that I'm visiting have a Chinese-run supermarket. Yeah. Any of the food packaging that is coming in and being ordered in to Africa at the moment, we have 110 women agri-food SMEs that Lady Agri supports in Kinshasa. All of their packaging is coming from China. Yeah. So China is ahead of the curve, and they're investing in the long game. And agri-food and sustainable food systems is a long game And as it's Year of the Women Farmer, let's think about the other 52% of the population who are getting us our cocoa and coffee here to us in UCC today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hilary. I agree. I'm going to selfishly use the last couple of minutes of this amazing panel. As the chair of the young board at eFarmer, I'm going to take my little bit of rights there and focus this question from the audience on the next generation. We've spoken a lot about AI and how scared we are about all of that and how that's going to influence the job markets. And I've spoken to a couple of the youth members at the conference, especially those of us coming from these developing economies, asking how do we as the next generation contribute to not falling behind, while also not burning ourselves out, feeling that we aren't running fast enough and that these results are not happening quickly enough. So just for the young people in the room, if you can each give me one sentence of your best advice for the next generation looking to contribute to the smallholder farmer development across the world.
My contribution would be travel. Travel as much as you can. Go everywhere you can. Visit, the villages, talk to the guys who are there, share their food, share their passion, look what they are doing, try to understand them, so your westernized, whatever AI prompt disappears a little bit from your brain, and you'll be able to actually embrace a different culture with different needs, and you'll start to understand the world in a different way. And of course, you're bright, you studied, you had the privilege of studying in a university like this, and I think it will be fantastic for having those brains working with a different mindset, and that's what we need from the youth.
Thank you.
Well, globally, agriculture and the food system is in transition, right? China also, the size are getting bigger, and so on. But at the same time, the smallholder are going to stay for a long time. So as a young professional interested in food system, my advice is really to look at that as opportunity, the smallholder farming, right? And so that means that we need to have a better understanding, really, what the smallholders wants, right? How can we serve that wants to address that? That's going to be very important. For example, if you look at that, well, they do. One constraint the small farmer facing in China, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, is the lack of the labor. You will be very surprised, right? So that means they need to use a machine. But they don't have money to buy the machine, right? And so on. So they need a cheaper way to use a machine. So how can you serve that? As a young people, maybe you can establish a company, like a third-party service company, right? What we call to provide support service to smallholders. And you can have a machine, you can rent that out, do the cultivation for the farmer, harvest for the farmer, right? And we want to reduce the fertilizer use, for example, in China. If you want a smallholder, as an individual farmer, to reduce that, you're not going to achieve that, right? So you have to find a way to get the good quality fertilizer, green fertilizer, to apply that in a reasonable cost. Again, applying fertilizer could be very labor intensive. You need some collective action and or market-oriented service. The young people can look at it to identify those opportunities to provide a service. So with AI, same thing. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity in the agri-food sectors. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Hilary.
I suppose my issue would be that what is probably overwhelming for young people at the moment is that we've gone through a whole series of polycrisis. There's the job issues that people are worried, there's AI. The good news is that food is not going to go out of fashion. We're not going to stop eating. Hopefully we'll eat better. Hopefully we will all have our number of calories that we need. but it's not going to go out of fashion. So it is an industry, it is a sector which is going to evolve. We now have food as medicine for our health. Food is something to share. It brings people together. The land itself, there is something about going back to that, which I think can take everyone's mental health to a very much a better equilibrium if we get back to that. So looking at it as a sector of massive, massive innovation, possibilities for innovation, bringing people together, and it's what actually defines us as human beings. So I don't think there'll be another sector as exciting. So get involved, action, 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 and hopefully with that we'll get results. So
Amazing, thank you. I think we're heading into the tea break, and the very good news is that they will be joining us there. So instead of limiting all of us to one conversation, I really do encourage you to please come and continue the conversation with us during the tea break. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you, panelists. It's been amazing.